Florida forward Thomas Haugh was widely projected to be one of the best returning players in college basketball, and has been just that in scaling up his production across the board, cementing his draft case in the process. Haugh broke out in his second season with the Gators by playing a gluey but pivotal role en route to a national championship, and he's been a vital part of their success in his third season. He's on the older side for a junior at nearly 23 years old on draft night, but has great measurables at 6'9" with a seemingly plus wingspan. He lacks truly elite fallback skills, but is exceptionally well-rounded for a forward, bringing length and vertical athleticism, energy and high IQ play, off-ball scoring, and defensive impact. A big part of what makes Thomas Haugh so productive at the collegiate level is his plus length and vertical pop. Again, he's listed at 6'9" and seems to have a plus wingspan that aids him on both ends. When you pair that with the functional verticality, it makes for a pretty versatile two-way producer. Offensively, Haugh can use his bounce in the full or half court, rising high for easy dunks and lays. He gets off the floor much quicker than expected and can typically get the ball to an unblockable point a majority of the time. Again, this is pretty functional in the sense that he does not need a lot of space to lift off. He can effectively power off one long stride, making for an effective dunker spot option, cutter, slasher, and more in the half court. He has a great catch radius and almost always approaches the basket without fear of contact, leading to a pretty high free throw rate. Haugh is less prone to using his boost on defense, preferring to stay down for one-on-one contests, but has been seen deploying it in transition and when doubling for some highlight-worthy contests and blocks. The reason I specify his vertical athleticism here is that the lateral quickness and pure foot speed leave some to be desired, which we'll touch on more later in the video.
Pass to Haugh for the throw strikes. That was a ball. If it were a strike, he might have had a chance for a three, and instead in Gainesville. Brown couldn't finish it, but there's been 6 dunks, and there's a swat.
Oge did such a great job taking all of that away in the first half.
And now, under Foster.
Some of these misses are pretty wild.
A block by Haugh.
In tandem with Haugh's physical tools are some intangibles that really help to glue his skill set together: energy, toughness, pure effort, and high IQ play. I get that these things can be a little overblown when evaluating some of the best athletes on the planet, but you would be hard-pressed to find a player across the country with more gas in the tank than Thomas Haugh. And more often than you'd think, it does make the difference and has moved the scoreboard in the right direction for Florida. He just does not stop moving. He'll run the floor in transition, sprint back on defense, dive for loose balls, bulldoze his way through ball screens, move off the ball, embrace contact on both ends. He's a great rebounder, nabbing 6.4 per game, and screener given his love for contact. And despite how hard-nosed he is, he also has pretty keen awareness to him in terms of space, game flow, floor reading, things that should make translation to a multitude of schemes even easier. He's averaging 2 assists per game to 1.7 turnovers, ball moving, hitting open shooters, and more. A direct quote from Vanderbilt head coach Mark Byington: "I don't know if anyone plays harder in the country than Thomas Haugh," end quote, but I just think that's impressive for a player who's essentially the guy now and could have blown things like that off. When you pair Haugh's size and verticality with his understanding of the game and lack of an off button, you usually get a player who can't help but impact the game positively. Haugh's offensive game at the NBA level will naturally mirror what he's done for the last 2 seasons with Florida, thriving off the ball with his physical tools and instincts. An easy selling point is how little he needs the ball to be effective. He's been one of the best players in the country so far this season, averaging just shy of 18 points per game on 48% shooting, doing so almost completely spotting up, getting out in transition, cutting, and crashing the offensive glass. Haugh has a great understanding of space on the floor and how to attack it, doing so easily in the full court with an unstoppable motor, and instinctually in the half court with good anticipation of how the defense is moving and flowing. We'll touch more on his handle as a whole later, but he has more than enough to simply use 1 to 2 dribbles or straight line drive the ball. Once at the rim, he's athletic enough to usually slam it or at least draw contact, but has fine touch on layups too, shooting about 65% as a whole across his junior and senior seasons. Haugh also has a pretty feathery float game that should be usable at the next level. Haugh's at his best in the open floor, running hard, gravitating toward openings with real speed, and converting with power. He's good for 63% field goal percentage in transition, most of which comes at the rim. The other bulk of his points come on spot-up shots, where he's scoring 40%, mostly doing so by simply taking threes. But he's also really improved his ability to attack hard closeouts over the last year, shooting 50% on twos, up from just 29% as a junior. Haugh's natural cutting and glass crashing are the final pieces to the off-ball puzzle, again utilizing his physicality and tools to shoot 68 and 63% respectively. And the more spaced out NBA should help to open things up a little more for Thomas Haugh at the next level.
obviously the largest victim in the history of that. Condon playing with 4 personal fouls. Lob, out, reach back to...
It takes 19 threes in the second half the way they did in the first.
Haugh down the lane. Nice feed.
Gave up his red shirt, came back really with less than half a season remaining, knowing that they might need him on the clock and then took a shot. That ball's got to move.
Shoveling, Shinya. Condon, some options. Slashing.
But he looked comfortable on that drive.
Mostly an off-the-bench guy last year. Huh? Lays it in.
Capping off what I would consider Thomas Haugh's pros is his defense, which prior to his offensive breakout with the Gators was likely his selling point in terms of impact. Across his 33 minutes, Haugh is averaging 1 steal and block per game, using all of the aforementioned traits to wreak havoc, hustling around, standing tall and fanning out with height and length, inviting contact, communicating, and using a non-stop motor. Positionally, Haugh is best served simply guarding opposing forwards or big wings. He's great at chesting up, staying disciplined, and doing anything he can to affect a scorer's rhythm or shot, be that getting a hand in, bumping, just making it as tough as possible on his matchups, whether he ends up on the positive or negative side of the play. He's incredibly fundamental as a defender. He can cover a lot of ground, is sneakily strong, rarely giving up ground even to bigger matchups. Haugh's posted fine, albeit not elite steal and block numbers, but is a player that genuinely goes beyond the box score in terms of defensive impact and ability. His average defensive box plus minus of 4.3 across his junior and senior seasons is a testament to that. This is where Haugh's lesser lateral athleticism comes into play. He holds his own moving in space against wings and forwards, but quicker handlers of the ball don't have too much of an issue getting around him. He simply does not have the quick twitch athleticism or elite reaction time, and isn't great at changing directions on the fly. This can lead to some sluggish closeouts and contests, and leaves a few questions about how well he would translate to a massively switch-heavy scheme. Overall though, Haugh feels like a defender who will more than make up for these limitations with his competitiveness and awareness, coming out overall as a positive, or in the absolute worst, a wash.
Space erase a lot of issues. Michael Robinson's strong drive keeps the speed in terms of the first session. Back to the game here, penetration and a nice little fake.
Graduated, but man, they're starting to find their groove. Lee and Flan.
A quick release, straight nickel.
Gets it back for another crack. Now Mitchell. Pierce all the way to the rim and with Condon. Can't get through him. Pierce pull up 3. Yes!
Three-point shooting efficiency is far and away Haugh's most important area of improvement. As a primarily off-ball player, he's already been the beneficiary of open perimeter looks and will continue to be at the NBA level. A more efficient outside shot would not only help him to be a more prototypical modern four in the NBA, it would also open up his downhill game, and I specify efficient because I think he's been a fairly consistent shooter. Haugh's relationship with the three-point shot has certainly improved. He started out at 25% on just over 1 attempt as a freshman, boosting that to 34% on 2.5 attempts in year 2, and finally rounding out to 35% on great volume as a junior. Right now, he's taking just under 9 triples per 100 possessions, far and away the most threes he has ever shot. The mechanics aren't perfect, with a little too much of his guide hand on top of the ball, but there's nothing too damning about them. For better or worse, Haugh is a very consistently middling jump shooter. His three-point shots on all jumpers, catch and shoot shots both guarded and unguarded, and dribble jumpers hover in the same range. The lowest being about 33% on the guarded catch and shoot shots, and the highest being unguarded at 36%. Everything else falls in between this percentage-wise. In terms of play types, it's effectively the same thing, 37% spotting up, 35% in transition. All this to say, obviously you would like Haugh's percentages to be higher, but given his consistency coupled with the growth that he's shown over the last several seasons, and some solid indicators such as a good free throw percentage and higher volume, offer some hope that he will continue to climb and top out as a three-point threat. The last area of improvement would be his ball handling, which if upgraded could create more efficient looks at the rim, making his scoring in general more dynamic, and it would also help to limit some mistakes here and there. Again, Haugh is a fine handler of the ball in moderation, simply straight lining to the rim, attacking hard closeouts, or with some space in the open floor. He's just not yet comfortable pairing together dribble moves, or really using advanced dribble moves at all, and I think some of the directional stuff does come into play here as well. Naturally, he is more comfy handling the ball in simplistic ways, ways and driving right, which is very typical of a forward in his size and mold, but I do think it pushes him away from offensive positional versatility and away from major time as a wing. Again, this is not some major issue. I think Haugh can be serviceable and effective outside of tightening the handle, but it would add another layer to his offensive game that could help him to see consistent NBA time or an increased role.
Coming up these final games of January. Thomas Haugh.
Team this half. Haugh loves to go to his right. There he goes again. Jump hook. Missed it.
Your boogie Flynn, you can use your dribble penetration to get in the middle of this zone.
Haugh, floater won't go.
Haugh's jack of all trades, master of none tag has some merit. He really doesn't have any skills you can point to and say that is going to be elite at the NBA level. But on the flip side of that coin, you have a player with great height and length, functional athleticism, one who impacts the game at nearly every single level, scoring without detracting from the offense, ball moving, rebounding, screening, plus defense, and Haugh does all this with energy, toughness, feel for the game, and tons of other winning traits. It's hard to envision Haugh not finding his way onto the NBA court in some form or fashion, and where NBA front offices think his still improving skills will land long term is likely going to directly affect where they take him at the 26th draft. I'd expect his range to start in the late lottery for any teams looking for a ready-made, gluey forward that can hit the ground running, and I think it extends into the early 20s. Some landing spots I like for Haugh include the Heat, Warriors, and Raptors.